You want to know about betrayal? Let me tell you about the kind that comes from your own blood. The inheritance of thorns, 89 years. That's how long I've been breathing on this earth. 47 of those years building something from nothing. 22 of them watching my own sons tear it all down. They say blood is thicker than water. What they don't tell you is that sometimes blood runs so thick it drowns everything good in its path. My name is Vittorio De Luca Caravelli. You might know Golden Age Seating, one of the 5 largest office chair manufacturers in the world. If you feel like this story might reach you somehow, follow the channel. That way, you help me bring more stories like this, and we grow with every life we learn from. Every executive who's ever leaned back in comfort, every office worker who survived another endless day, they've probably touched something I created, something I built with these hands. These hands that came to Atlanta in 1954 with nothing but 18 years of hunger and a head full of dreams. Nothing. $18 in my pocket. Couldn't speak English worth a damn. Slept on park benches until I found work in a furniture factory. The owner, Mr. Richardson, he looked at this skinny Italian kid and saw cheap labor. What he didn't see was the fire, the absolute consuming need to never be nothing again. But this isn't a rags to riches story. Those are for people who get to keep what they build. This is about what happens when your greatest achievement becomes your greatest curse. When the empire you construct with love becomes the weapon your children use to destroy you. Sit back, get comfortable. This might take a while. The architecture of Dream's Golden Age Seating. Even the name carries weight. Now 50 million pounds of steel and fabric shipped annually. Offices from Manhattan to Mumbai filled with our creations. But in 1962, it was just me, a rented warehouse in industrial Atlanta, and an idea that comfort shouldn't be a luxury. Lorenzo was 7 when I bought that first warehouse. Anthony was 5. They'd come with me on weekends, their small hands trying to help Daddy with the big machines. Lorenzo always asked questions. How does this work, Papa? Why do we make them this way? Anthony preferred the finished products, spinning in the completed chairs until he was dizzy with laughter. God, they were beautiful then. I used to imagine them taking over someday. Pictured them as men, standing where I stood, carrying forward what I'd started. Not because they had to, because they chose to. Because they understood the golden age wasn't seating, wasn't just business. It was legacy. It was proof that the scared kid from Napoli had mattered. Fool. Old, stupid fool. The company grew like something alive. By 1975, we had 3 facilities. By 1985, we were international. The Italian craftsmanship I'd inherited, combined with American efficiency and innovation, it was a formula nobody could replicate. Every chair that left our factories carried a piece of my soul, and the world kept asking for more. The boys grew up inside those walls. They knew every machine, every worker, every square inch of every facility. I thought that meant something. I thought it meant they understood. Understanding and caring, I learned, are not the same thing. The art of letting go retirement. Such a gentle word for such a violent act. In 2010, I was 74. The arthritis in my hands made the fine detail work harder each day. The early mornings that had once energized me began to feel like stones in my chest. Maria, my ex-wife, she'd been gone for years by then, but her voice still echoed. Vittorio, you cannot take the business with you when you die. Maybe I should have tried. Lorenzo was 43, Anthony 41. Both married, both with children of their own, both educated in the finest business schools, both carrying MBA degrees I'd paid for with 12-hour days and weekend overtime. They spoke the language of modern business synergies, market penetration, stakeholder value, all those pretty words that mean nothing when you're sweating over a lathe at midnight. But they were my sons, my blood, the continuation of everything I'd built. The succession plan seemed simple enough. I'd transfer operational control to them immediately, retain 25% ownership, and receive payment for that share based on a professional evaluation of the company's worth. Clean, businesslike, the kind of arrangement lawyers and accountants praise for its clarity. Clarity. There's a joke somewhere in that word. The evaluation came back at $50 million. Golden Age Seating, the company I'd built from nothing. officially worth $50 million in 2010. My 25% share, $12.5 million. Seems reasonable, doesn't it? A fair end to a successful career. A father passing his life's work to his children, receiving just compensation. Everyone moving forward with dignity intact. If only it had been true. The mathematics of betrayal, $4 million. That's what they paid me. $4,200,000 to be precise. For a quarter share of a company, officially valued at $50 million. You can do the math, can't you? At first, I told myself there must be some mistake. Some complex financial structure I didn't understand. Modern business operates differently than it did when I was learning. After all, maybe there were tax implications, legal considerations, debt structures that reduced the actual payout. I called Lorenzo. Son, I think there might be an error in the payment calculation. His voice, that voice I'd heard take its first breath, sounded tired, distant. Papa, everything's correct. We'll send you the detailed breakdown. The breakdown. 47 pages of financial documentation that might as well have been written in ancient Greek. Depreciation schedules, asset reevaluations, debt obligations, operational adjustments. Every line item carefully crafted to explain why $50 million became $16 million and why my share of $16 million was only 4.2. Such beautiful lies, wrapped in such professional paper. I hired an accountant, then another, then a third. Each one looked at the documents with the same expression, the way you might look at a car accident, understanding that something terrible had happened while struggling to identify exactly what. The third accountant, Rebecca Santos, she was different. Former IRS investigator turned private practice. She spread those 47 pages across her conference table like a crime scene investigator examining evidence. Mr. Caravelli, she said after 2 weeks of analysis, someone has been very creative with your company's books. Creative. Such a pleasant word for theft. The archaeology of deception. The deeper Rebecca dug, the clearer the picture became. Golden Age seating hadn't been worth $50 million in 2010 and have been worth closer to $75 million, maybe more. But a series of financial maneuvers executed over the 18 months leading up to my retirement had systematically reduced the company's apparent value. Equipment leased to subsidiary companies at below market rates. Intellectual property transferred to newly created entities for nominal fees. Revenue streams redirected through shell corporations that existed only on paper. Debt obligations mysteriously inflated. Assets mysteriously undervalued. My sons hadn't just stolen from me. They'd engineered the theft. The methodology was sophisticated. Whoever had designed this scheme understood both accounting principles and legal loopholes with surgical precision. This wasn't opportunistic greed. It was premeditated financial homicide, and it had been planned while I was still working beside them every day, while I was mentoring them, trusting them, preparing to hand them everything I'd built, while I was playing the proud father, introducing them to clients as the future of Golden Age seating. Every handshake had been hollow. Every "I love you, Papa" had been performance art. Rebecca identified at least $18 million in value that had been systematically hidden or transferred. $18 million that should have increased my share from $4.2 million to nearly $8 million. And that was just what could be proved with available documentation. "There's more," Rebecca said during our final meeting. "I'm certain of it. But uncovering the full scope would require forensic analysis of banking records, subsidiary transactions, possibly international accounts. We're talking about a sophisticated, long-term fraud operation. My own children." The sound of silence. I confronted them on a Tuesday, October 15th, 2013. I remember the date because it was the day I stopped being a father and became a plaintiff. Lorenzo's office, my old office, though he'd redecorated everything in modern minimalist style. Clean lines, neutral colors, no trace of the warmth that had once filled those walls. He sat behind the desk I'd chosen 30 years earlier, looking every inch the successful executive. Anthony arrived 10 minutes later, his face already set in the expression I'd learned to recognize. Polite attention masking complete disinterest. "Boys," I said, still calling them boys. Even then, We need to discuss the company evaluation. Lorenzo leaned back in his chair, our chair. Golden Age Model 7842. With the lumbar support innovation I developed in 1987. Papa, we've been through this. Everything was done according to standard accounting practices. Standard practices that somehow made $80 million disappear. The silence stretched like a wire under tension. Anthony examined his fingernails. Lorenzo straightened papers that were already perfectly straight. That's when I knew. The moment of silence when they could have shown surprise, demanded explanations, expressed outrage at such accusations. Instead, they showed me nothing. Nothing at all. Papa, Anthony finally said, his voice carrying that particular patience adults reserve for difficult children. Maybe you should consider that the business world has become more complex than when you were actively involved. More complex. As if complexity justified theft. Are you telling me, I said, keeping my voice level, that I'm too old to understand what you've done? Lorenzo stood up, walked to the window that overlooked the factory floor. We're telling you that you're obsessing over details you don't fully grasp. The company is successful. You've been fairly compensated, and continuing to question every decision only creates unnecessary conflict. Unnecessary conflict. That phrase has echoed in my mind for 11 years now. Unnecessary conflict. As if a father demanding honesty from his children was somehow unreasonable. As if stealing millions from the man who gave you life was a minor disagreement over accounting principles. I left that office knowing I'd lost more than money. I'd lost the illusion that blood meant loyalty. I'd lost the fantasy that building something together created permanent bonds. Most painfully, I'd lost my sons long before that day, and I'd been too blind to notice. The machinery of Justice Charles Philip Stevens, criminal defense attorney turned civil litigator, with 32 years of experience and a reputation for taking cases other lawyers wouldn't touch. When I first met him, he looked exactly like what he was, a man who'd spent decades watching people disappoint him. Mr. Caravelli, he said, reviewing Rebecca's analysis. This is going to be expensive, time-consuming, and emotionally devastating. Are you certain you want to proceed? Was I certain? Was I certain I wanted to spend my remaining years fighting my own children in court? Was I certain I wanted to transform family dinners into depositions, Christmas mornings into legal briefs, grandchildren into casualties of war? Mr. Stevens, I replied, I came to this country with nothing. I built something that mattered. If I let them steal it without consequence, what message does that send? What example am I setting? He nodded slowly. Then we proceed. The first lawsuit was filed in November 2013. Breach of fiduciary duty, fraudulent accounting, conspiracy to defraud. Legal language for, my children are thieves. The response came 3 weeks later. Motion to dismiss, claims of frivolous litigation, accusations that I was a bitter old man unable to accept retirement. Their counterclaim suggested I was mentally incompetent to understand the complexity of modern business practices. Incompetent. My own sons, claiming I lacked the mental capacity to understand what they'd done to me. The legal machinery ground into motion. Depositions, document production, expert witnesses, forensic accountants. Every aspect of Golden Age Seating's operations dissected by lawyers who'd never built anything more complex than billable hour spreadsheets. Lorenzo and Anthony hired Morrison and Associates, the kind of white-shoe law firm that specializes in protecting wealthy families from consequences. Their strategy became clear immediately. Delay, deny, discredit. Make the case so expensive and time-consuming that I'd eventually surrender out of exhaustion. They underestimated the depth of my rage. The rhythm of war years. That's how legal battles are measured. Not in weeks or months, but in years of grinding, relentless combat. Each side filing motions, requesting extensions, challenging evidence, deposing witnesses. The legal equivalent of trench warfare, costly, brutal, and designed to exhaust rather than resolve. 2014, motion denied. Appeal filed. 2015, partial settlement discussions. Collapsed over terms. 2016, new evidence presented. Challenged on procedural grounds. 2017, trial date set. Postponed due to scheduling conflicts. 2018, mediation attempted. Failed within hours. 2019, second trial date set. Postponed due to additional discovery. 2020, COVID delays. Court system in chaos. 2021, virtual depositions. Technology failures and legal objections. 2022, trial finally scheduled for 2023. 10 years. 10 years of my life spent translating family betrayal into legal terminology. Each year, the case files grew thicker. Each year, my sons grew more distant. Each year, the grandchildren I'd once held as babies became teenagers who knew me only as the old man fighting their fathers in court. But each year also brought new evidence, new forensic discoveries that painted the fraud in increasingly clear detail. Bank records showing money transferred to accounts I'd never known existed. Invoices for services that were never performed. Assets that had been systematically undervalued, then sold at market prices to entities owned by shell companies, controlled by Surprise, Lorenzo, and Anthony. The theft was comprehensive, sophisticated, and utterly without remorse. The most damaging evidence came in 2020. Audio recordings from a 2011 board meeting where Lorenzo and Anthony discussed managing Papa's expectations during the succession process. Their voices, captured by a recording system I'd installed for legitimate business purposes, laid out the strategy in detail. He'll never understand the complexity. Anthony's voice, clear as day. By the time he figures out what actually happened, if he ever does, it'll be too late to change anything. Lorenzo's response. The old man built something valuable, but he never understood its full potential. We're just optimizing the transition. Such clinical language for destroying your father. The nuclear auction, March 2019. The day they tried to have me declared mentally incompetent. I was reviewing legal documents in my study when Charles called. Vittorio, we need to meet immediately. Your sons have filed a petition for guardianship. They wanted to put me in a legal cage. The petition painted me as a delusional old man, obsessed with conspiracy theories, unable to manage my affairs, a danger to myself and others. They cited my obsessive litigation, my paranoid accusations, and my inability to accept reality. 23 pages of clinical language designed to transform a father seeking justice into a patient requiring supervision. The cruelest cut. They'd recruited my own doctor to support their case. Dr. Harrison, who'd been treating me for 15 years, had provided a statement suggesting that my persistent focus on business matters indicated possible cognitive decline and age-related paranoia. Reading his assessment felt like being stabbed by a trusted friend, but they'd made one mistake. One beautiful, fatal error. They'd assumed I was actually losing my mind. The court-ordered psychiatric evaluation took place over 3 days. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a specialist in geriatric psychology, conducted batteries of tests measuring memory, reasoning, emotional stability, and decision-making capacity. The results were unambiguous. My cognitive function was not only normal for my age, but superior in several categories. Mr. Caravelli, Dr. Walsh told the court, shows no signs of dementia, paranoia, or any other mental impairment that would affect his ability to manage his affairs. His accusations may be unwelcome, but they appear to be based on careful analysis of evidence rather than delusional thinking. The guardianship petition was denied, but the damage was done. My own children had publicly declared me insane. In trying to silence me, they'd revealed the exact depth of their desperation. That's when I knew I had them. The weight of evidence 2023 brought the breakthrough that changed everything. Detective Maria Rodriguez from the Georgia Bureau of Investigations, White-Collar Crime Division, called Charles on a Friday afternoon. Mr. Stevens, we've completed our analysis of the Golden Age seating case. You're going to want to see this. The GBI had been conducting a parallel investigation for 2 years, triggered by patterns they'd identified in bank transactions. Their forensic accounting team had resources and authority that private investigators lacked: subpoena power, banking records access, the ability to trace transactions across multiple states and jurisdictions. What they found was breathtaking in its scope. 17 subsidiary companies, 8 shell corporations, $23 million in systematically hidden assets. A fraud scheme that had been operating not just since my retirement, but for nearly 5 years before it. They'd been stealing from Golden Age seating and from me while I was still actively running the company. The evidence was irrefutable. Bank records, email communications, accounting manipulations, asset transfers. The kind of documentation that transforms civil disputes into criminal cases. Criminal cases. Mr. Caravelli, Detective Rodriguez explained, we're prepared to file charges for conspiracy to commit fraud, money laundering, and racketeering. The evidence supports prosecuting this as organized criminal activity. Lorenzo and Anthony, my sons, facing potential prison time. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt hollow. The mathematics of loss, $35 million. That's the current estimated value of what they stole. Not the original $12.5 million I'd been owed, but $35 million when you account for compound growth, hidden assets, and ongoing theft from company operations. $35 million stolen by the children I'd raised, educated, and trusted with everything I'd built. But the money was never really the point. You want to know what genuine loss feels like? It's not the bank accounts or the asset valuations. It's the silence. The absolute, crushing silence where family used to be. The last time I saw them was October 3rd, 2017. Maria's funeral, my ex-wife, their mother, the woman who'd held our family together even after our marriage fell apart. We stood at opposite ends of the cemetery, two groups of people who shared blood but nothing else. Lorenzo's eldest son, Marcus, my grandson, 22 years old, now looked across the gravesite at me. For just a moment, I thought I saw recognition there. Not anger or resentment, just acknowledgement. The brief connection between a grandfather and a grandson, complicated by circumstances neither of us had chosen. Then Lorenzo put his hand on Marcus's shoulder and turned him away. 6 grandchildren. 6 beautiful children who've grown up hearing their father's version of this story. 6 young people who know me only as the bitter old man who took their fathers to court, who destroyed family peace, who chose lawsuits over love. What they don't know is that I didn't choose anything. I simply refused to pretend theft wasn't theft because it was committed by my own blood. The sanctuary of horses, my ranch spreads across 400 acres in northern Georgia. Rolling hills that catch morning light like golden water. 70 horses, all Lusitano purebreds, descendants of the war horses that carried Portuguese knights into battle centuries ago. Each one worth more than most people's houses, but their value isn't measured in dollars. Horses don't lie. They don't steal. They don't file fraudulent legal documents or try to have you declared insane. Every morning at 6, I walk among them. Apollo, my lead stallion, approaches for his customary greeting, a gentle nuzzle that acknowledges our partnership without demanding explanations. The Mares cluster near the fence, their foals playing games that have nothing to do with inheritance disputes or family betrayal. This is my world now. 7 years of self-imposed exile from humanity, surrounded by creatures whose loyalty is earned through consistency and care rather than blood relations or business interests. The horses have taught me something profound. Trust is not an entitlement. I have staff, of course. Maria Elena manages the house. Roberto handles the grounds. Dr. Peterson provides veterinary care. Professional relationships, clearly defined, honestly transacted. They perform their duties. I pay them fairly, and nobody pretends the arrangement is more than it is. There's peace in that clarity. My phone rarely rings now. Charles updates me monthly on legal developments, but the criminal case is proceeding without my active involvement. The wheels of justice turn slowly, but they turn. Lorenzo and Anthony will face consequences for their choices, eventually. I no longer care what form those consequences take. The visitor last month, something unprecedented happened. Someone came to see me, Marcus, my eldest grandson, now 25, standing at my front door like a messenger from a world I'd forgotten existed. Tall like his father, but with his grandmother's eyes, Maria's eyes, soft and intelligent and careful. For a moment, I thought I was seeing ghosts. "Grandfather," he said. Just that. No explanation, no preamble, no justification for the 8-year silence. We sat on the porch overlooking the pasture where the horses grazed in afternoon sunlight. For 30 minutes, neither of us spoke. I'd forgotten how to make small talk with family members. He seemed equally uncertain about the protocol for visiting estranged grandfathers. Finally, he broke the silence. "I graduate from law school next month," he said. "Third in my class at Emory. Congratulations." My voice sounded rusty from disuse in family conversations. "I wrote my thesis on corporate fraud cases. White-collar crime, specifically involving family businesses." I felt something twist in my chest. Pride? Fear? Hope? "Papa told me not to come here," he continued. "Said it would be disloyal, that you just try to poison me against them." We watched Apollo chase a younger stallion away from the choice grazing spot near the creek. Dominance hierarchies, clearly established and honestly maintained. "What do you think?" I asked. Marcus turned to look at me directly for the first time since arriving. "I think I'm old enough to make my own decisions about family loyalty." In that moment, I saw the future I'd given up hoping for. The weight of truth. "Grandfather," Marcus said, "I need to ask you something directly, and I need you to answer honestly." I nodded. "Did they really steal from you?" "All of it. The company evaluation, the hidden assets, the accounting manipulation." "Is it all true?" For 8 years, no family member had asked me that question. They'd accused me of paranoia, bitterness, senility, vindictiveness. But no one had simply asked whether my claims were factual. "Yes," I said, "every word of it." He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I know." Those 2 words hit me harder than any legal victory. "I've been working at Morrison & Associates this summer," he explained. "Intern position in their white-collar defense division. I wasn't assigned to your case, but..." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "But I have access to their filing systems." I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. The presence of an ally. "The evidence is overwhelming," he continued. "The shell companies, the asset transfers, the accounting manipulations, it's all documented in excruciating detail. Morrison's entire strategy is delay and discredit because they know they can't win on the facts. My grandson, working for the law firm trying to destroy me, had independently verified everything I'd claimed." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because," he said, "someone in this family should be on the side of truth." Truth, such a simple word for such a complicated concept. The price of victory, the criminal indictments, came down 3 weeks after Marcus's visit. Lorenzo and Anthony, along with their accountant and 2 business associates, charged with conspiracy to commit fraud, money laundering, and racketeering. Each count carrying potential prison sentences measured in years rather than months. The headlines wrote themselves. Office chair empire heirs accused of massive fraud. Family business becomes family crime syndicate. Italian immigrant's American dream becomes son's nightmare. Charles called with the news, his voice carrying satisfaction mixed with exhaustion. "Vittorio, we won. Complete vindication." The evidence is so overwhelming that prosecutors are confident of conviction. Won, past tense, as if the fight were over. But winning and being whole again are different things. The money will be recovered, most of it. Asset seizure, restitution orders, the machinery of legal remedy grinding my stolen millions back into my accounts. Numbers on bank statements, proof of vindication, mathematical validation of everything I'd claimed. What won't be recovered is simpler and more valuable. The sound of my grandchildren laughing at Christmas morning. The weight of daughters-in-law hugging me at family gatherings. The pride in Lorenzo's voice when he'd introduce me to clients as the founder, my father. You can prosecute theft. You cannot prosecute the murder of love. The architecture of regret, late at night. When the horses are quiet and the house feels too large for one old man, I sometimes wonder if I could have handled this differently. What if I'd simply accepted the $4 million and walked away? What if I'd swallowed the betrayal, ignored the evidence, chosen family peace over financial justice? What if I'd been the bigger man, the forgiving father, the grandfather who cared more about relationships than money? What if? What if? What if? But every time that question surfaces, I remember something crucial. I didn't choose this war. I simply refused to surrender in the face of theft. My sons made the decision to steal from me while I was still alive to discover it. They made the decision to lie when confronted with evidence. They made the decision to have me declared mentally incompetent rather than admit their crimes. Every escalation, every cruel twist, every moment of family destruction, they chose those paths. I was just the old man who insisted on calling theft what it was, regardless of who was doing the stealing. Sometimes being right is its own form of tragedy. The inheritance of loneliness Marcus visits monthly now. We've established a routine. He arrives Saturday morning. We inspect the horses together, share lunch on the porch, discuss his work at the small firm where he started his career specializing in corporate fraud cases. He's never asked me about reconciling with his father and uncle. I've never suggested it. Some wounds are too deep for healing. Some betrayals too comprehensive for forgiveness. This is one of those situations where the best possible outcome is peaceful coexistence at a distance. No more litigation, no more family warfare, but no pretense of restored relationships either. "Grandfather," Marcus said during his last visit, "do you ever regret fighting them?" I considered the question carefully. 8 years of legal battles, millions spent on attorneys, a criminal case that will destroy what remained of my family's reputation, complete estrangement from children and most grandchildren. "Regret fighting them?" I said. "No, but I regret that fighting them was necessary." He nodded understanding. At 25, he's already learned what took me 89 years to fully comprehend. Sometimes integrity costs everything you thought mattered, and you pay that price anyway because the alternative is living as a lie. The horses don't judge these choices. They simply exist in truth, moment by moment, without pretense or complexity. That's enough for me now. The sound of justice. The trial is scheduled for next spring. Lorenzo and Anthony will sit in defendant chairs, listening to prosecutors detail their crimes with the same precision they once used to execute them. The evidence will be presented methodically. Bank records, forged documents, shell company transactions, recorded conversations. Justice, finally, wearing the black robes of criminal court. Charles expects guilty verdicts on most counts. The evidence is simply too overwhelming for any other outcome. My sons will likely face prison sentences, not the decades they deserve, but years enough to understand that actions have consequences, even for people who think family blood grants immunity from law. I probably won't attend the trial. The satisfaction of watching them convicted wouldn't be worth the pain of seeing them in handcuffs. Orange jumpsuits replacing the business suits they wore while stealing my life's work. Some victories taste like ashes even as you're winning them. But I will read the transcripts. I will review the evidence presentations. I will document every detail of their prosecution, not from vindictiveness, but from the need to know that truth ultimately matters more than family loyalty. The boy who came from Italy with $18 in his pocket deserves that much. The weight of legacy. What kind of legacy does a man leave when his greatest achievement becomes the source of his greatest betrayal? Golden Age Seating continues operating under court-appointed management, its reputation somehow intact, despite the scandals surrounding its ownership. Workers still show up every day. Chairs still roll off production lines. Customers still trust the quality my father's hands first crafted in that rented warehouse 60 years ago. The company survived the theft. Maybe that's legacy enough. The horses will outlive me. Apollo has 15 good years left, maybe 20. The Maras will produce foals that will carry Portuguese bloodlines into another generation. The ranch itself will become someone else's sanctuary, another refuge for someone else's wounds. Physical legacies endure. Emotional ones are more complicated. Marcus represents the possibility that not everything dies with family betrayal. One grandson who chose truth over convenience, integrity over easy loyalty. One young man who looked at the evidence and decided his grandfather wasn't crazy, just wronged. Perhaps that's enough. Perhaps that's everything. In the end, we don't control what people remember about us. We only control what we do with the time and choices we're given. I chose to fight theft. Even when the thieves were my own blood, I chose truth over family peace. I chose justice over comfort. Given the same circumstances, I would make the same choices again. The measure of a man. This morning, like every morning for 7 years, I walked among the horses at dawn. The sun painted the pasture in gold and shadow, and for a moment, just a moment, I felt something approaching contentment, not happiness. Not the warm satisfaction of family love, or business success, or dreams fulfilled. Just the quiet peace of a man who fought when fighting was necessary, told the truth when lying would have been easier, and refused to pretend that blood relation creates immunity from moral judgment. That has to be enough. 89 years on this earth, 47 years building something that mattered, 11 years watching my own sons destroy it, 7 years learning to live with the aftermath. The mathematics of that equation will never balance. The losses will always outweigh the victories. The pain will always exceed the vindication. The questions will always outnumber the answers. But I am still standing. The boy from Naples who arrived with nothing, who built an empire from hunger and determination, who lost everything that could be stolen, but kept everything that truly belonged to him, his integrity, his truth, his refusal to accept that family betrayal should go unpunished simply because it's family doing the betraying. I am still standing. The horses know this about me. They respond to strength, to consistency, to the presence of someone who has been tested and not found wanting. They don't care about corporate fraud or family litigation or the complex arithmetic of betrayal. They care that I show up every morning, reliable as sunrise, carrying hay and water and the quiet strength of someone who has nothing left to prove. That's legacy enough. That's victory enough. That's all any of us really get in the end. The knowledge that we faced what needed facing, fought what needed fighting, and survived everything the world could throw at us. I am Vittorio De Luca Caravelli. I am 89 years old. I built something that mattered, lost everything that could be stolen, and kept everything that truly belonged to me. And I am still standing. The horses are waiting for their morning feed. The sun is climbing toward another day. The phone will ring eventually with updates on legal proceedings that will drag on long after I'm gone. But for now, there is only this: an old man, his horses, and the quiet satisfaction of someone who chose truth over comfort and lived to see justice, however incomplete, finally arrive. Some stories don't have happy endings. They just have true ones. This is mine. Thank you for staying with me and listening this far. Your attention is a gift. Did these minutes mean something to you? Then please follow the channel. Every click from you is a push that helps me keep bringing stories that truly stay with us.